evolution because now the fossil record has been disrupted in a way that completely devalues and disassembles the argument for long-age Earth and evolution over time and this gradual progression of life on Earth. And Peter knew it. And what's really striking to me, and also in some ways scary to me, is that the same thing that we're seeing today was happening back then prior to the flood. This couldn't possibly happen. We haven't seen this. We don't believe this. So as I was studying for this morning, I was thinking, well, why didn't God just wipe it all out? Why didn't he just start from scratch, right? Why didn't he? Why didn't he? And Peter mentions it at the very end of the scripture, right? He says, but by his word, the present heavens and earth are being reserved for what? Another judgment, another destruction, not by water, but by fire. And he wanted the account of the flood to remind us, that's what Peter is telling us, remember what happened in the age of Noah. You're going to see similar occurrences, as John mentioned, in the last days prior to the second judgment, much like what was going on in Noah's day. Now, I will, and I don't know how much time we have, but I will briefly talk a little bit about the objections that you typically hear, right? The objections are, and I've touched a little bit on some of these, the objections are, well, all doesn't mean all, right? And I think we've really gone through the text to say, yeah, the writer's intent was all means all. Every life form on earth, the entire surface of the earth was covered in water. There's no question that the intent of the writer was to portray a global flood. The second objection is that there is no evidence for such a flood in the geologic record. Well, if you have done any study in this area, what would you expect to see if there was a global flood? Well, you would expect to see billions of dead things that have been buried by water, carried by mud and sand in rock layer after rock layer, all the way across the earth. And if you look at the geological record right now, that is exactly what you see. You see billions of dead things that have been buried in rock layers across the earth. And so the geological record actually sustains and supports a global flood much better than it does the gradual growth of life on earth over millions of years. So again, when you look at the evidence through a biblical framework, it completely fits. It's just that there is a lot at risk from a demonic perspective to allow this to persist. Because again, I'm trying to undermine the power that God has over this earth and that Jesus has on this earth and his coming during the second judgment. Now, the other thing that obviously comes up a lot would be, how did Noah get all those animals on that tiny little boat? Well, it turns out that the portrayal of Noah's Ark has been skewed significantly in especially children's literature, right? This ark was enormous. If you have not had a chance to go up to Cincinnati and see the Answers in Genesis Ark encounter, it's incredible. The amount of space that's in that ark is enormous. The design was specific to survive a global catastrophe. And remember that you don't have to get every kind of cat or dog or horse, etc. The genetic variability, much like in humans, was specific to the kind of animal. And so Noah didn't have to bring an enormous number of animals to cover all of the different kinds. He had to bring one pair of a kind of cat, the kind of cat, the kind of dog, the kind of horse. So it's been estimated that really only 7,000 individual animals were necessary to preserve the animal kinds that we have currently. And of course, Noah and his family represented the human kind of living thing. So again, there are objections. There is evidence for and against. But when you look at it from a biblical perspective, over time, what we're seeing is more and more evidence that would support that this, much like creation, is supported by the scientific evidence that we see in our world today.
Something that struck me is a quote. It's a quote from C.S. Lewis that I can't quote, but I'm going to say what it means. But he says something as if the worldview, the idea of God, just like the light of the sun, I don't look at the sun's light like I see that the sun illuminates the things around me, and I can better see reality because of the sun's light. The same way, God and the worldview of Christianity allows me to be able to see reality clearly, more clearly. And I think that's just an added bonus. Of course, it's not really a proof, but it's an added help to understand the reality, the geological record, the things that we see in creation are better explained, in my opinion, by creation than they are by evolution, just for that reason.
Yeah, one last thing, and here's a great example of that, right? So one other objection you may hear is, where did all that water come from? Right? Yeah. 40 days of rain is not going to cover the entire surface of the earth, but what, and John mentioned it earlier, the water came from above, but it also came from below, the fountains of the deep. The earth was, this was a cataclysmic event that we have not seen since, right? The earth literally was ripped apart. Water came from below the surface of the earth, and for those of you that keep track of what's going on in the geological community, or you may just have seen it in the news, a year ago, scientists have now found that there is an enormous ocean of water underneath the surface of this earth, which had not been predicted, nor had it been discovered until about a year and a half ago. Well, of course, from a biblical perspective, you look at that and say, well, of course. Well, of course there is, right? Because God told us back in Genesis that the fountains of the deep provided the water for the earth's destruction that's articulated in Genesis 6 through 9.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being a part of our discussion today. And again, this key point at the end of this message, I want us to get across is that by faith we understand. It's not, and that's countercultural. That's not the way that the world functions today. The world tries to gather as much evidence as possible, scientific method, in order to understand. So it's like understanding, the knowledge comes first, and then the understanding. But the Bible exhorts us to believe, to trust God, and that from that, even though we don't understand His ways, even though we don't understand all the things that are around, by faith we understand. By faith we know. And so that's what we're going to close today. And let's go ahead and pray and ask God's blessing upon this time together. God, we know that when we come to you by faith, that reason is never far behind. When we believe and we trust in you, Lord, that you are the fountain of all wisdom. You're the source of all knowledge. And I pray, Lord, that